Hello and welcome to another SALT hot take. So I'm Dan Taylor, I'm head of technical SEO at SALT, and I've got Thierry alongside me.
Yes, hello, hello. Yes, I am the head of data insights. Right, what have you got for us today, Dan?
So this is fresh off the press, published by Google on the keyword of their own internal blog, or internal their search blog yesterday.
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of a really good signal for what we're going to go through in this article of how Google is further extending their reach into the travel market. And I know I've got thoughts on this, you've got thoughts on this, especially with things like SGE and AI coming up, which SGE is going to be one of the first things to come in there. But I think it's quite good for us just to kind of go through and start to actually anticipate the impact that this potentially will have, especially since this is Google directly saying these are things in our ecosystem
Yes.
that you can use to satisfy your queries and your objectives without listing websites.
Yeah.
So the first kind of one on this 6 ways, so everyone likes the listicle, is that of SGE. And this is kind of, I mean, my theory on this is that it's been tested outside of lab opt-in now in the US, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see this actually get launched fully in wild in tandem with IO in May, which is just under 50 days away. And it would also be a year from it being announced to roll out, which looks good for shareholders. And obviously, it's mentioned in their quarterly earning calls that AI is going to be a big revenue generator for them anyway. But this, I feel, is a really clear signal of intent, especially where it's like the example here is plan me a 3-day trip to Philadelphia. It's all about history. That is quite a complex, layered query.
Yes.
Because you've got the location, you've got the time span, and you've got a modifying room there, which is much more depth and things to do in Philadelphia, for example.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's been quite a lot of AI or, large language models that have attempted to do something like this for the travel industry for quite a while now. Since AI became the big, the hot take, as it were. But I do think it takes something like Google that has all that contextual data to be able to pull something like this off. Because, recently we were in Lithuania and we tried a similar large language model to do the same thing, kind of give us a personalized approach to stuff. But it struggled with everything from location, opening times, even to understanding, what is it that I have, where have I visited previously and what do I love? And so then compiling what it understands about me in order to provide something that is truly actually personalized, as opposed to like people like you behave like this. Here are some things that are similar.
Yeah, and absolutely. And from a brand perspective, from a travel company perspective, this is Google's already made the land grab through things like the flight checker, which I appreciate you EU having to do some clawback on because of legal legislation changes against them. Even to the point they created their own tour guide content a few years ago. This is even more about kind of land grabbing to websites who may be specialists in doing tour operations around certain cities, or they gain traffic and will gain traffic to the site and then monetize the website to produce guides, things like timeout, for example, and things like that. This is a big disruptor to that journey. And when we talk about AI in multiple sectors, I always try to look at how disruptive AI is to that journey. And in theory, a user can come to AI here and not need to leave the site. All this is a pure disruption element in that it can take a user away from clicking on any site, it can expand queries, and it might, and also how it will influence certain users as well, because it might not pull through hidden gems, it might not pull through certain locations, events that aren't necessarily the most featured, the highest. So that will actually impact footfall potentially for real businesses as well. So this is quite a big signal of intent for me, and it's something that especially travel companies need to start planning around in terms of content, but also brand presence and understanding what exposure they've got to this.
Yes, and I think you did a talk on it recently, where you kind of did a really nice model which looked at like your the risk based on what the user actually wants from you and their commercialness of said search terms that they're looking for. And so then with things like this, as you kind of said, like it's that person is here to kind of discover, learn, and absorb. And technically, they don't really need to leave that ecosystem until they have a more distinct intent around like location or specific actions that they need to kind of carry out. So as you say, like it's even more so important now that travel companies really understand why users come to them and what is the value they're adding to that user's journey, as opposed to going head to head with this.
I also think, rather than just like you said, going head to head with this, it's understanding that once you do get a user into your ecosystem now, where AI is sort of, how do you keep them in your ecosystem? Whether that's, do you get them to sign up for a newsletter? What data points do you collect? It's that multi-touch point, and we've even like with TikTok and everything else with search becoming more multimodal, multi-touch point, as I've said. If something's going to be blocking and taking people away from coming into your owned sphere, once you have them in that sphere, do you need to push them through to notifications? Do you need to push them through to email? How do you provide a value proposition to retain that user? Because you might have got them organically once. There's nothing to say that when they come back to do those queries and Google has updated the SGE results for that query, they might not find you again, or it might be spun around. So how that user retention piece and engagement piece is going to be ultimately important as well. So it kind of goes from being here's content and a proposition to rank for keywords to here's content and value to that keyword search, and then provide value once a user lands on that page.
Agreed. Let's have a little look at the rest of them. I'm aware there is 6 of these.
So number 2 that is featured in here is again another push towards Google's ecosystem, and this is the lists of recommendations within Maps, which is currently in sort of a beta, I guess you probably say, across US and or specific US and Canadian cities. But this helps introduce trending, top and hidden gem restaurant lists created by Google Maps based on what people are interested in or are loving in that city. So for me, the interesting thing with the wording here is it's what people are interested in or loving in that city. So that says to me there's a measurement happening here, and the measurement is interest and love. So love, you can probably speculate as what those metrics are. That'll probably be reviews. It could be when Google will say, I mean, in my opinion, as well, for a restaurant, if people are going to a restaurant on a Saturday evening, and there's 100 restaurants in the city, Google's already collecting the data based on location of phones, how long people are spending there. So if people are spending a long time there, people are reporting to spend actual money there, could that be a signal that users are loving the location?
Yeah, definitely. Because I've seen as well over time that they've always had a busy area icon for certain places. So they already understand where, you know, high population, like density areas occur, also by time, and then therefore kind of just run the data to understand, well, in this place there, you know, over indexes for restaurants, bars, or tours or anything that might occur. I guess what will be quite interesting from this as well is the discoverability of hidden gems, as it were. So most people, when we are looking at some of the TikTok data, are looking to do what the locals do or discover that something that no one else is doing. So it'll be quite interesting as to how they will therefore quantify and measure hidden gems. I think that'd be quite cool.
Yeah, I think for me that's a really strong opportunity that businesses will have, because there can be some really fantastic independent restaurants, or just, I'm going to call them entertainment centers within a city, and they might not necessarily be mega tech savvy. They might be just good on Instagram, good on word of mouth, good on footfall because of location. But if they don't have that investment or that knowledge into local SEO, for want of a better word, the Hidden Gem Initiative can especially help give them some surfaceability. And it kind of, one of the biggest things I've always hated in SEO is the phrase that Google likes big brands. This for me kind of feels like a leveling of a playing field of, even if you don't have big brand budget, if you provide big brand service and big brand expectations, we will serve you in as visible a way as we would a big brand.
Do you reckon then it'll, I know we've always talked about kind of influencers as well, and the impact that they've had on social in general as to like discoverability of whether it's travel locations or restaurants or entertainment centers. I've got a feeling then that I've been testing this actually on my own account, where I've been providing whether it's reviews or taking pictures of certain venues, etc., as I go to certain cities, building lists so that people can follow, etc. So I'm trying to understand then how all of that data they've collected that I've kind of given them is going to be maybe help to kind of service or serve some of this type of content, where actually you become a trusted individual within a given city or how you travel, and the reviews I provide or the way I engage with certain areas might affect how some of this is kind of served up. Because if we're saying that people trust people, there's nothing better than going, oh, by the way, you're in LA, this individual has been here and loved these 6 places. Here's a list they've created and others have followed.
I mean, it logically makes sense as an evolution. The thing that I think Google will be most concerned about is the influencers and influencer. I mean, can you remember Clout as a metric? Yeah, Clout score.
Yeah.
Almost like influencers, their Clout score becomes the new metric for measuring, like we used to, like we do with links at times. And because I mean, you can easily manipulate social with a little bit of money. You can easily manipulate the number of followers you've got, post likes, anything like that, and manipulate and inflate your numbers. And we all know it goes on, but Google themselves for a number of years, they've gamified the local review guide thing. There's a huge percentage of people who do it genuinely, but there are people who do gamify it to become higher levels on the basis that they then sell their reviews or they sell their prominence as that. So I think this kind of goes down to similar to what we've probably seen with like the helpful content updates. I know I did a study on helpful content update from September with travel brands, but some of the sites I saw hit were single authors over a space of 5 weeks writing things from the ultimate guide to traveling in China through to 5 top New England rooftop bars. And it's like, there's no way you can be an authority in all this, and you're spreading yourself thin. And
everyone's written it in that time period.
Yeah, and I think with this, device will come into play a lot more, because if you're, it's like where I'm based, if I spend a lot of time at my house, because
hopefully
you do. So my phone knows where I live. I mean, I plug into my Android, what's it called in the car? My Android Play. And it roughly knows by what time of day it is where I'm going. And
are you going to work?
Yes. Oh, like it's 17 minutes to home, and I'm like, this is weird, you know this. But it understands all that. So it understands that if you're spending a lot of time in a location, it understands you're going to restaurants and bars. That I feel will become more relevant. So actual genuine influencers and being able to showcase that they're real. How they do that depends. Well, that for me is where the real value is going to be. And I think most genuine, I'm going to say genuine, most genuine people who do this and actually live a life and go to places aren't going to be switched on to that economy of where we can go. So I think we're going to be very much like the goodwill bloggers from 10 years ago who then get approached by groups and we're like, oh, we'll give you 10, 20 pounds to publish an article on your site, and they'll fall into that trap. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any manipulation of this and how the metrics move on. So in the process of moving on and touching based on what you said about creating customized lists, the third section we're wanting to kind of push more is when you create a list of places in maps, you'll be able to choose the order they appear, so you can organize them by top favorites chronologically like an itinerary, tailoring your list based on whatever you need. So I know you said you're building lists at the moment, and you have been.
So I will, if I've been to an area, so we recently visited Mallorca last year. So as we went to restaurants or hotels that we stayed at, we built that list, left reviews, took pictures. I then shared that as well. So it's you can basically search for me and that list, and it's being used by a couple of hundred other people who have followed that similar route too, which has been quite good. But also they can contribute, so you can have it open as well, so they have the ability to contribute to your list. So next time we go, I can also rediscover places I may have missed the first time around.
Yeah, and I think this is a great opportunity for brands to genuinely create an added value touch point, because if Google is pushing people more towards this list feature, like being transparent, this isn't a feature I've used, I know it exists. If Google's making this more prominent and accessible, and I can visit a city, it's like, oh, what do we do? Like, I was in London a couple of weeks ago, and we went to an exhibit at the Queen's Gallery at Buckingham Palace, and it was over before it was. So I was like, oh, we've got 5 hours in London. That's when it kind of goes to that point. So if there's these lists to share, so if I was then working at Buckingham Palace marketing, tourism, whatever we have that department as, it'd be great, you visited this gallery. Here is a list, and you can even use a QR code because you've got a person captive. Here's a list of things to do for the next 2-3 hours, and kind of build it out. And if you're in my area, it's like a things to do on, I mean, the example of this is New York City, but if you're a restaurant, for example, and you want to put people on a, I don't know, a Spanish food tour or something like that, or a Taste of America tour, so people go to like Cat's Diner, they go everywhere else, they can put themselves as a restaurant option on there.
Yeah.
And as long as it's done in an added value way, it's another potential brand touch point that you might not necessarily be able to track it.
Yeah.
But if people are using it and you're increasing football, it's another genuine thing a genuine brand would do.
Yeah, I really like this feature.
The fourth one on here, which kind of forays away from travel a little bit, is around the travel wardrobe. And this goes on to personalized style recommendations, which is something we're going to touch on in another kind of catch-up video. But interestingly, there is this new Tinder-esque swiping feature almost of getting style recommendations. And it's essentially, they phrase it as if you search for things like men's polo shirts, you can now see a selection labeled style recommendations. Quickly rate the options with thumbs up, thumbs down, or swipe left and right, because it's a trained feature for most people. And you can get instant results on what complement your vacation wardrobe. And also, interestingly, it remembers your preferences, so you can actually narrow down much faster. So this isn't a start now, end now. It's a, you can pick this up and come back to it a later date. So I think this is more disruptive for the fashion industry than it is for travel, but obviously it is important to travelers, because if you're going away to a, I mean, they've used, I mean, this is summer travel tips, and we're using men's polo shirts as very summer attire. You typically would buy a few new garments going away.
Yeah, no, definitely. And also just understanding that, like, as a travel business or brand, that, let's say we deal with flights, for example, or hotels, right? It doesn't stop at the transaction of just, I have my hotel now, go away, I don't want to ever speak to you again. Like, there is other value to be added around, like, why as a hotel brand could I not provide a style guide as to what to wear around, like, based on temperatures, based on cultural norms within the area, etc. So I've Googled a lot of places that we're looking to visit in the Middle East, and the hotels that we're staying at, to try and get an understanding as to, like, what is culturally right for me to be able to wear, what is right for the temperature, since it's a desert most of the time. And so then it's understanding, actually, I can add more value than just a place to sleep.
Yeah, no, 100%. I actually did exactly the same thing when I was in Qatar last year. And because it's a combination of, it's the comfort, it's the social acceptance as well, because it's a very, it's a different society, it's a different set of governing rules. But I mean, even though like a hotel won't be featured here, for me, this is also emphasizes the need for clear, important, concise, and marked up imagery as a fashion brand. And if you're trying to target men's summer polo shirts, or you're trying to target, because for me, this isn't the direct what the search feature is, it's what the audience is. And as a travel brand, if you're not aware that this is what's going to be happening, and you're trying to target that summer audience, or that audience looking for these kind of garments, because obviously this is just using this as an example, it is very feasible this will be rolled out across most of fashion all year round. So understanding how this is a feature that people can use is going to be massively impactful. So looking at number 5, now this is something that's been around for, I'm going to say, wow, it's been around a month and a half or so.
That's long in the world of AI.
Yeah. But even to the point where, I mean, I raised this conference in London last month. We have phone providers and phone contract providers in the UK using Circle to Search as a USP to warrant upgrading Pixel phones, to warrant upgrading to different technologies. And they've always used it in like advertising as looking at, say, oh, there's a lady wearing, I think it's a silver glasses, a puffer jacket, so they circle the glasses, they find the glasses. The fact that they're also pushing the fact that you can circle parts of a menu. I mean, you've always been able to translate images, but they're kind of more pushing it in that sense as more of a day-to-day tool versus a more generic kind of just product searcher. Kind of, again, it's that signal intent of trying to integrate something into your ecosystem, even more that learned behavior.
I'm a really big fan of this. I mean, I've used a translate independently. I've used, my partner uses the kind of Circle search quite often, actually, from an inspiration perspective, where she's seen somebody, an influencer or whoever, who maybe has not tagged up their content correctly, to discover more stuff. So yeah, bringing it into a similar ecosystem, I think does help, because even having to go to a separate app is just jarring.
Yeah.
So for a user, this is
it's seamless and it's
nice
frictionless
experience,
and it creates it going. So number 6 on the listicle of 6, keep going, is for multi-search in Lens as a personal tool guide. Now, Lens has been around a while. It's something that I use quite a bit of for various reasons. But what's interesting is that they're appearing to now in this kind of GIF especially, is it's the tying of Lens to the output. So I believe it's now reset. So you go onto Lens, you see the painting, all pulls up, it's nice, it's for water lilies. Then you do the search next to it. So why did they paint this? So basically in a museum, but it's putting you into an SGE result.
Yeah.
Now, this is really one of the first, from especially what I've seen, ways, well, first times Google's tied Lens to the AI products, and it's sort of starting to now map different products in the ecosystem together as being more of a seamless app versus standalone product. Like, use Lens to do this. No, this is a tie-in of actually using two of them together.
This is what we were saying before around like making the ecosystem a little bit more conversational. So it's less about, I want to understand this static fact or find this static thing. But I understand that you are on a tour looking at a specific image, you want to understand more, and instead of just answering that query, it's way more of a conversational element and tying all their products together to help that user have a great experience. I think from a user perspective, all 6 of these are actually incredible. I don't think a user will ever really understand that the 6 of them are maybe separate entities or products in themselves, but it really does add an incredible level of like care towards their experience, which is quite cool.
Yeah, for me, one of the other interesting things, especially just around this GIF, and it might just be where it gets cut off, but I mean, tinfoil hat time. You'll notice here the whole phone screenshot just has ask to follow up at the bottom, and they will scroll, but then it just shows, is this useful in the thumbs? Now, whether or not that's just where they stopped, and that's where the kind of the screen recording ended, on a normal SGE result, you'd then expect to go into organic.
Yes.
So this raises the question for me, is this search triggering an organic search? In which case it will load a full search results page, and once the URL loads, you get the impression, etc. Or is this native within that app? And is it native within that ecosystem in Lens? Right. So is this a Lens search with SGE as a backup, or is it actually going into the SERP? And this is, like I said, this could even be wild speculation, but it's just where this gets cut off.
Yeah. That is very, very, very interesting, actually.
But they are our initial reactions and kind of takes on what has been Google's latest update from a keyword. There's a few things in here which are going to disrupt travel companies and the way that travel companies reach audiences through Google and generally organic. Please let us know in the comments what your thoughts are, how much you're seeing this in the wild, especially if you're in any of the test countries. And yeah, it'd be great to kind of get your thoughts and understandings. And as always, if you like the content, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, it all helps out. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you very much.